when we were walking out here, Dr. J or Dr. Jenny Wang here, she's like, it's okay if you mess up. Let's be vulnerable. So, so bear with me. I'm not a public speaker. I'm just a person that is very happy to be here with you guys today. So hello, everyone. Welcome to Creating Space San Francisco, an intergenerational community-centered mental health gathering dedicated to transforming how our AA and HPI communities discover and discuss mental health. I almost forgot my name. My name is Phillip Lim, co-founder of Creating Space, and I am filled with so much gratitude to be with you guys here today. What a beautiful crowd. And it's like this space, it's just like, it just feels like we've made it, right? Thank you for being here today as we create space together to explore tending to the child within. An afternoon designed to help explore childhood experiences that have shaped our coping strategies and discover how letting go can open a door to a fuller, freer, and more abundant life. San Francisco marks our fourth in-person gathering since being founded in 2023. This beautiful, vibrant city also feels like a full circle moment because it is the impetus of this community healing movement that has been a long time coming. Thank you to the Asian Art Museum for providing us this beautiful space to convene and to have this important community-centered conversation that hopes to bring together youth, parents, caregivers, and elders in the heart of San Francisco. To the wonderful team at TAAF and Norman Chen, we are eternally grateful for your unwavering support since day one of our mission. Thank you to the local mental health organizations that are taking part in our community resource hub that will be taking place towards the end of our program, just right outside these doors. Thank you to our esteemed panelists for your time, your courage in sharing your personal stories here with us today. And last but not least, my heartfelt shout out to my mini but mighty Creating Space team, all volunteering outside their professional daily hustles. Linda, Rebecca, Amy, Richie, and Dr. J. You all literally moved heaven and earth to create this space for us today. You guys are guardian angels amongst us, and without you, Creating Space would not be possible. So please, can you guys help me just give them applause? Like angels, they're all surrounding you guys right now, so. Growing up, I don't ever recall having the space to explore my feelings. The term mental health, not to mention conversations around it, were non-existent. Even today, I recognize in my own family dynamics that mental health is still a very largely abstract idea. Because as immigrants, we are so conditioned to push everything aside in order to survive through it. Towards the end of the pandemic, I realized folks in our communities, including myself, needed this type of space more than ever to understand the triggers and unpack the traumas of childhood experiences of not being seen, heard, nor understood. A space to remind each other that we are not alone. And what has happened to me, what has happened to you, what has happened to us is complicated and worth figuring out, worth sharing to teach and heal for the generations to come. Because trauma travels through generations until we are willing to face it. Creating space for one another is a powerful starting point to address these traumas and to help broker the questions. What are these feelings? Where did they come from? Am I the only one feeling this? And why me? Hence, Creating Space was born. Our mission is to simply create space for our AA and HPI communities to come together to confront often silenced issues, cultural barriers that lead to intergenerational misunderstandings. To have dialogue and figure out ways to reframe the mental health narrative for ourselves to bridge generations before and after us. Our goal is the transformation of shame and stigma from mental health to self-empowerment towards being mentally healthy. Because when we come together, we are able to heal together. So let's sit back, take a deep breath, acknowledge our presence, as we are about to take in an intimate conversation and powerful personal stories that will be shared by our esteemed panelists. This is a completely safe space created for all of us for gentle reflection to explore, connect, and create dialogue that will hopefully ignite empathy for ourselves as we continue our own personal journeys towards tending to our own child within. After the panel discussion segment, a Q&A session will follow. I hope that you all will feel comfortable to engage and ask freely whatever is on your mind. We are here for you and each other just to be. Now, I would like to introduce Creating Space's very own Chief Wellness Officer, community healer, author, and psychologist, Dr. Jenny Wang, with our esteemed panelists. Thank you.
I always like to take this moment. It's like the groom when he's standing and the bride's coming in. It's like take that moment to linger. And this is our fourth time, and I'm still overwhelmed with emotion to see all of you here. So, first of all, this space is such a vessel for what's happening today. And this moment will not happen ever again. And so I want you to take a moment to appreciate the majesty of this art museum, to feel the community of the people around you. This is our legacy. We're here because people built this for us generations before, and we're here because we're building something for generations to come. I am so glad you decided to come today. So I'd like to invite us all into a collective pause, collective breath. If you feel comfortable, please close your eyes with me. And think of the word that describes the energy of your childhood. It might be a color, it might be a texture, it might be an emotion. And now imagine that childhood version of you, that younger you that lived and breathed through all of those textures, emotions, and experiences. And then consider the armor that you had to put on as you became an adult, the protection that you had to adopt to be the adult that you are today. Maybe you were the achieving one. Maybe you were the caregiving one. Maybe you were the peacemaking one, or the good one, or for some of us, the broken one, or maybe the never enough one. We all put on these armors so that we could protect ourselves and the ones we loved. And in this moment, I'm inviting you to set the armor down. You don't need to protect here. You can just be and just exist with us. So when you feel comfortable, you can open up your eyes. And I hope you can just be and receive today. So earlier we asked all of you to write down the energy of your childhood and look at the depth and breadth of the responses. I love the food ramen bowl or pho or whatever it is that's up there. Freshly cut fruit that we all know and love. What memories, what experiences, but also what pain, what struggle. And this is what I'm hoping we can dive into today. Because all of these things that we've been carrying inside, they're still present in a lot of us. And so I hope you're able to reach into those parts today as you hear these stories. So we have this amazing panel of folks who have volunteered their time to be with us. And I'd like each of them to introduce themselves and share with us whatever you feel is relevant for our conversation today. So maybe let's start with Ethan, since he's our youngest panelist.
Okay. So hi everyone, I am Ethan Su. I am a junior at Lowell High School, so right here in the city. And wait, hold up. Sorry, I was a little sick over the week, but I'm the co-executive director of AAPI Youth Rising, and our group has over 230 chapters nationally, but it's founded on the idea of using small changes and small actions in education to really promote youth voices and to combat racism.
Thank you.
By the way, do you know how amazing you are? Because when I was a junior in high school, I was cutting class. So
I'm still doing that.
Okay, my name is Dion Lim. Many of you may know me here in the Bay Area. I spent almost 20 years as a television news journalist and reporter. And because I think especially Asian American women don't pat themselves on the back enough, I'm just going to say it. I'm Emmy Award winning, and I championed our stories during the pandemic when nobody else would. I'm shaking. I recently stepped away so that way I could have the freedom to tell our stories in a more broad context, to be more proud and not have to face those who say it's too much, because we are not too much. We are just getting started. Thank you all so much for having me.
I have chills. I'm Priscilla. I am Taiwanese American. I grew up in Michigan. My parents immigrated.
too.
Oh wow! I was the only Asian in town, in where I grew up in Michigan. My parents immigrated from Taiwan, and I currently live here in San Francisco. I have a skincare company called cocokind. We are an accessible skincare company. We're sold at Target and Ulta, but really setting out to break the typical beauty standards that are set by beauty companies, and we've been doing it for over 10 years. Thank you. And I have 3 kids that are 4, 3, and 1 at home napping right now.
Hi everyone, my name is Dave Liu. I've been in the Bay Area for a long time, worked with Jerry Yang at Yahoo in the late 90s, so that dates myself. But since then I've started a few companies, and then during the pandemic I wrote a letter in the Wall Street Journal that we got 8,000 business leaders to sign, and condemning Asian hate crimes that were happening, and that led to the founding of Stand With Asian Americans. And since then, I've started a venture capital fund to invest in Asian American founders. I've been very vocal about the bamboo ceiling and how we need to build our own houses. And it's very much been about kind of finding voice for those who don't have the voice. And that's why I also made the documentary about Jeremy Lin, 38 The Garden, because that story needed to be told when we were told that there were enough stories about Asians. That was far from true. And so I have decided to spend a lot of my time and my mission for the rest of my career focusing on lifting up the Asian American community.
Thank you all so much. So let's get deeper. Can you describe how you see yourself in your childhood? The kid that you were, the environment that you were in. What was life like? And for you, Ethan, you're still in childhood, but so, and whoever would like to kind of take it from first, please.
Maybe us Michigan kids can go.
Yeah.
Okay.
You go first.
Okay, so being born in Michigan, there weren't a lot of people who looked like me. Moving to Ohio, a suburb outside of Cleveland, I thought, oh, please, 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 no more Asians. And then things definitely were not more diverse when I moved to Connecticut, where I was one of 3 Asian kids in my school, and the other 2 Asian kids were adopted. So I really didn't know that bringing certain foods for lunch was not weird, icky, and stinky. And I had no frame of reference, so I felt tremendous awkwardness, and all I wanted to do was to be seen somehow. Will people listen to me? How come nobody will look at me? Or they think I'm weird? And I thought very shamefully, wouldn't it be better to be an ugly Caucasian person, because even that would be better than being a beautiful Asian person? And I get choked up thinking about that now because it seems shameful, but I feel as though this is a very shared experience for many of you out there. And now that I get to be in the Bay Area, I am so incredibly proud to stand or sit in front of all of you today because we are all so beautiful.
Yeah, I totally relate to that. For so long, I mean, into my mid-20s, I always talk about how I felt really uncomfortable in my skin. I've always trying to be something else, right? And growing up as one of the only Asian kid in my class, I was always trying to be more white. Like I would go to tanning beds and I would try to tan. I would wear color contacts. And even when I went to school, college, and there were a lot of more Asian people around, I was like very proudly like the one Asian girl in a white sorority. Like that was something that I felt really uncomfortable with my Asian identity. But separately, I think like so many things that were mentioned in terms of like, you know, being the kid that was the caregiver, that was an overachiever, that was not enough. Like, I feel like I checked every single one of those boxes when you were saying that. My parents immigrated here from Taiwan and were, you know, in the pursuit of the American dream and excellence, and love my parents so much and very thankful for my upbringing. At the same time, you know, there's a lot of anxiety around that. There's a lot of competitiveness, right? There's a lot of like, be the best. My mom just reminded us in our WhatsApp chat this week that she was like, when you guys would come home with an A, I would ask how many other kids got an A. Because if there was too many other kids with an A, it wasn't good enough. And we, you know, it's very much like marks my childhood of like constantly trying to be the best and very competitive, which is still something that I'm trying to grapple with today in both the pros and the cons. But when I moved here in San Francisco, I think that completely opened up my world, you know, to being really proud to be Asian, really for the first time in my life, in my 30s. So happy to be here, but it's taken a long time.
Yeah, I guess I grew up in New Jersey where I grew up when I was little, up in the 4th grade. I was the only Asian kid among all black and white kids. And I remember having to, I mean, I would get made fun of all the time, but I was very quick with insults, so they learned the yo mama jokes were very, very fast. And so they learned not to mess with me after a certain point because they would get embarrassed and everyone would laugh at them. So they left me alone for a while. But I mean, I was the same way. Parents were from Taiwan. You know, grades were important. Beatings happened, all these things that we don't talk about, all the trauma that a lot of us have. We thought it was okay because that's what everyone goes through, and you just suck it up. I mean, I think in at least in our household, in the culture, is that enduring suffering, siku, is a thing that we all Asians do so well, and that's why we become targets, because we just don't fight back or whatnot. But I wasn't raised that way. When I was little, we were at the mall, and my family was waiting for a little train ride at the mall, and a white family cut in front of us, and my dad started screaming at them. My mom and I were like, we hid in the KB toy store nearby because we're like, this is humiliating. Like, Dad, why are you doing this? But after they left, all these people thanked him for saying something. And I realized he didn't care what people thought of him. He's doing the right thing. And so that's where I think I got, my fight from. Literally, because as a senior in high school, as a sophomore in high school, I was suspended because some kid called me a racist name, and he attacked me with a knife, and I ended up beating him up for, I don't know what I was thinking, but the crazy part is when I was in the principal's office, what made me most scared was not that they were gonna call the police or do any of this other stuff. I threw up because I thought I wasn't gonna get into Harvard. I was like, this is gonna ruin my school record. And I was like, I ran to the bathroom, threw up, and I said, oh my gosh, everything's done for. But this was the stuff in my head. So I was not your typical Asian kid, but I always grew up with being proud of being Asian, because in my area, we were about 30% East and South Asian. And so I've always had that pride. And so for when I see others who don't have that, it makes me really sad, because I feel like I've always had this main character energy, but I've had to lean into it, because I've been called out before by professors saying, why are you so why are you not telling people what you do? Because you're just like, people will make up stuff about what they do and they're proud of it. You did stuff and you won't even talk about it. And I'm like, wow, it's so true, because we make ourselves small in a lot of ways in other spaces, and that's why it's great to be in this kind of space where we don't have to make ourselves small.
Yeah. Okay. To talk about my childhood, I don't know if I can do that.
Think
but,
way back. Way back.
I think, especially with the Asian identity, I feel like my generation, I don't know if you could vouch for me on this, but we're growing up not as Asian or American, we're growing up as Asian and American, and we're growing up in this kind of, because our grandparents, they forged the path, they came over, they had the courage to come over, and they were really proud of being American. I remember my grandma, she told me that the chasm between her being Asian and now, it's too deep. It's deeper than the Pacific Ocean. It's like she can never go back to being Asian, but that's all right. She identified with being American. And then for my parents, they were raised as American, going to the schools, speaking the language, but they sometimes felt they weren't accepted as being American. And now we're growing up, we have this dual Asian-American identity, and I think, especially with my generation, we're trying to pick and choose what values to take, what to learn from both sides, what about being Asian is so great, what about being American is so great, and how can we forge our own identity growing up in America? Yeah.
Thank you guys so much. I feel like this sets a context, right, for what you will share in terms of your stories going forward. So thank you all. So yesterday, I attended the TAAF Youth Mental Health Summit. And one of the things that kept getting repeated was pressure. And TAAF did a study called Beyond the Surface, and it talks about how young AA and HPIs are most negatively affected by pressure from the self and from family. 43% cite self-pressure to succeed academically, competitively, or professionally. 39% reporting a sense of duty towards their family or a fear of causing them shame. And so one of the things I heard yesterday that kind of sucker punched me was a woman was role-playing a mother role, and she said, "We came to this country for you. We did this for you." And in that moment, I was like, oh, this poor child. The amount of pressure that statement implies. And so I'm curious for y'all, what did pressure look like? Where did it come from for you? And how did you handle that pressure as you were growing up?
I can start. I think there was a lot of pressure from my parents to perform in school. I think even back in 4th grade, when I don't know, I must have been really bad at math in 4th grade, because I think I got a 40-something on a math test, and I I got a beat down after that, and I think I got better. I did better at math after that, but still, it was. I think I just still remember the room and everything that happened, and I don't think I didn't realize how until I was older how much that impacted me, and maybe it was a way of them disciplining me so I would have my own drive, because later I was intensely competitive with my peers, with my friends. I mean, to an unhealthy point where I think I remember in high school when the letters were coming out for college acceptances, I told my friends I would go pick up their letters for them and bring it to school because I wanted to see where they got in. It was like that level of insanity. I think I pushed that aside till I just said that right now, but a lot of stuff was, I mean, I think I was so motivated by not just leaving home, but the making, our validation, our self-worth a lot of it comes from appeasing our parents and making them proud. And so it was never on my own, but I think I told myself it was my own. Like, if I get into Harvard, I will be very proud of myself. But in reality, it was probably, I will make my parents happy that they did everything for me and sacrificed everything for me. And so in this warped sense, I feel like that seeking validation from them for everything I've done since then has always been about, did I make it worth it for them to sacrifice what they did to come here? When in reality, I didn't tell them to come here. I mean, they came on their own because they wanted a better life for themselves too. And so I feel like in the filial piety, Asian, like Confucian cultures, the indebtedness and owing to your parents and taking care, I mean, yes, we can take care of our parents, but we also need to live our own lives, and so many of us live the lives of our parents, and I've met so many friends who are doctors and lawyers who are miserable with their lives because they're 40-something and they hate their jobs, they wish they could have done something else. They were all artists, musicians, talented people who want to be actors and writers, and then they went to become lawyers and working at a law firm that they could never become partner because they wouldn't let them become partner, and so, but they can't change. They're stuck in that job. And so I feel like so many of our dreams are not our own, and they're our parents' dreams. I remember starting my first company, and my mom, like, after I was doing well even, my mom would still be like, when are you gonna quit and join Google? I'm like, really? And so, I feel like hoop after hoop I was jumping through to go to an Ivy League school, to go to Stanford for business school, to work at Apple and eBay, other big companies. I kept thinking, okay, this will be enough, but it was never enough. And it wasn't, I don't know that it was not enough for them. I think in my mind, it was still not enough for me.
Yeah.
And so I think we are programmed from an early age to make our parents proud, and then we believe that that's what makes us happy and proud. But every hoop I got through, it didn't turn, on the other end, it didn't turn out that was that fulfilling, and I wanted something else and something more.
Yeah. And Dave, I also got, I think, a C- in math. And this was much to the chagrin of my father, who is an immigrant from Hong Kong. He was a scientist, PhD, all of that. And my mother, who didn't speak very much English, also from Taiwan, she was forced, when she came to the US, she worked as a seamstress, and she also shoveled manure for my father's boss and in the horse stables after his job was done. And she would say, all of this is for you. And I saw her come home exhausted every single day. And I would want to cry because all of this was on my shoulders, but yet I was not good at math. So my God, what am I going to do? So when I told them I wanted to go into journalism, and when they discovered I had to start at the bottom of the totem pole and make $12.50 an hour, schlepping a camera around in Podunk, Massachusetts, it was seen as a failure, so I kept on climbing. I then became the first news anchor at television stations in Kansas and in North Carolina and in Florida, and every single time I called them to say that I got this new job, a very competitive position, the first question would be, you know what it is.
How much is it?
How much money are you making? Yeah. And they still, even when I thought that I would be considered a success, they still could not quantify that by just the paycheck because a television news person was not a traditional successful role. So it wasn't until I think I was 37, 38 that my father finally responded to one of my newscasts because I was on 2020 for a national audience. And he said in an email, it was one sentence, it said, "I am proud of you." And I thought, my God, it took that long. But to them, that is what success was, because if it wasn't on the paycheck, then it had to be in a form that they could turn on their television in Connecticut and see from across the country.
At least for my parents, I will say that they've probably only said to me like a couple times in my life that they're proud of me in terms of what I'm doing, my career, but for them, they've said it to all their other friends, their community. Like, I mean, I don't even know what is on their Facebook posts. Like, it's just like wild, you know, I'm sure all the things about my company. And so I grew up with this pressure, not only in our family, but so much of it was like, well, what am I going to say? My kid is going to an Ivy League. You better go to an Ivy League. This person's got into Stanford. This person's a varsity captain, blah, blah, blah. And there's always this comparison, right? This like major pressure on comparison. And it's so much about like the performative, what does my kid look like? What am I going to talk about? And I still deal with that, right? Like, I still feel like my parents, they'll say to me all the time, we of course we're proud of you. Just because we don't say it to you, I mean, we tell our friends all the time about how successful you are. And I'm like, they just don't realize, right? Yeah. But I think for me, I internalized all that pressure. I internalized it and felt this like it's never enough type of thing, right? I think as a woman too, I noticed a difference in my family at least about just not only all of the pressure to perform and to be excellent and to be the best in school and everything, but to also look beautiful, be skinny, have the best skin. And when I had major breakouts because I got my dad's skin, that's a disaster, right? Like, there's all this pressure that we had to be, also had to be extremely outgoing, answer the phone, ask the aunties how they're doing, remember what's going on in their lives. You have to be really outgoing. And as an introverted kid, that was not easy for me, right? So all these kind of pressures of being like, you have to be something that you're not constantly, like everywhere, physically, emotionally, mentally. And for me, I just internalized all of it, and that shows up today in being, I have to constantly check myself of like, I have everything that I could ever ask for, right? And I think that is something that, like, I'm so proud that I have this like self-awareness and that checkpoint, and through years of therapy, I can now say, but it's still, I feel like it's like part of my DNA that I have to actively fight against.
When I think of pressure, I think of my own mental health struggles. So I have ADHD and the inattentive subtype. And at the start, I didn't really know what it was. And I would be going to school, and my trusted friends and trusted adults would sometimes tell me, oh, you don't fit the normal stereotype of someone with ADHD. You don't fit the normal idea of being like distractible, not being focused, moving around, being hyper. And additionally, some even went to the point saying that I did not have it, or they doubted I had it, and talked about it being very overdiagnosed and denied it. And I internalized a lot of these feelings, and still today, I'm still fighting against it, but I feel like that internalize of those feelings led me to often not take my resources, not take advantage of what was provided to me, like accommodations, because I was scared I was cheating, or I was taking advantage of something that I didn't have. And then bringing it out wider to youth in general, I feel like there is this pressure on youth to figure out who we are early on, really early. We have to make some grand narrative, because if we are not aiming to be this grand narrative of what we want to be, we'll never achieve it, and we have to decide now. If we don't decide later, or if we decide later, we don't have enough time. And additionally, with the rise of social media and everything, it feels like our identity is permanent, so everything that we do lasts and is there forever. So it feels like we're being boxed up or being created into some sort of agenda that we're pushing to like get our best self, or pushing towards our future. And this conflict over anxiety, I feel like for youth, at least for me, has led to a lot of anxiety, a lot of stress, and I think I can also see a lot of parallels in my peers, and they all talk about being very stressed and having to deal with all these mental health challenges, and it seems like a very common occurrence for them.
It is. And I think you bring up a really good question of like, what is the implicit messaging that adults are giving youth? Because I say all the time, and when I speak for schools, I'm like, I'll put up a poll like, what do you care about most? Financial success, right? Love and relationships, mental health or well-being. And when I put up the poll, everybody's like, mental health and well-being. And then I'm like, okay, so how much of your language and your relationship with your child is focused on mental health and well-being? And I'm guilty of it too. Sometimes my daughter comes home and is like, how's the test? How'd it go? And that is not conveying the thing that I know I want her to care about, you know? And so I'm curious, Ethan, like, what is some of even the messaging that maybe adults, teachers, coaches, parents, whoever have given to youth that adds to that pressure without them knowing it?
Adding to that pressure. I feel like much of my own pressure was internalized, and I internalized much of that stigma. But I could give a few examples of where it did help, like good examples. And when I look back, the moment that immediately comes to my mind is my middle school math teacher. And it was after the pandemic, so I was coming back and I was very unorganized. I was not motivated to do anything, and I had all these mental health issues. And he may or may not have known that during that time. But let me tell a story about it. So he was deriving the quadratic equation. So I'm not a big math person, but I remember this very discreetly. He was deriving the quadratic equation, and it started off as this abstract sort of polynomial that you can plug any numbers into, and then through a few steps, moving them around, a little bit of belief in math, you get a simple equation, and you get something that you can plug everything into, and then you get a solution. And I kept doing that equation multiple times. I would always show my friends it, and they'd be like, stop doing this. You don't even like math. Why do you keep doing this equation? And now that I look back on it, this equation meant so much to me. And it's because it drew the parallel between my own mental health struggles and this almost chaotic nature of my thoughts, of what was going around me. And through concrete, specific steps, each one taken through, I would eventually come to this simple conclusion, this solution. It works out. Like, it gave me so much hope that I could take whatever struggle I was going through, and through proper guidance, I could attain something that would be helpful. And this, that helped me so much. And additionally, I think that another avenue that I've really enjoyed for helping with my mental health has been music. I've been able to express so much with it, and be able to go through so many things with it. And it's just been a great avenue to really show myself and have the space to be myself.
Yeah, thank you so much for sharing that. And for all the adult panelists, you all have kids. And I feel like a lot of my clients will show up for therapy when they have kids, because the stakes are high. Yes. And they don't want to pass on things, right? And so in the pressure and the internalized things that you've shared earlier, what is happening now in your parenting that you're having to confront, be honest about, or potentially do differently? And what is your hope for your children?
This sounds very sad, but I remember whenever people would ask me in my 20s and 30s, are you planning on having kids? I would say, no, it's my career, it's taking off here in one city or another. But the sad part is that I look back, and part of it was the fear of messing up a child the way that I felt messed up when I was growing up. because I came from a household where it took me a very long time to forgive them and how they parented. I didn't discover this until many years of therapy, probably into my 30s, but I was told as, I think I was either 9, 10, or 11, that I was not allowed to cry because that was a sign of weakness. The only time I could cry would be at my mother's funeral. Imagine being a child being told to repress those feelings. It is so incredibly harmful. It in turn created a person, me, where I did not know how to process any emotions. And when I did cry, it was waterworks because all I could think of was how could I make myself stop? And it made me cry even more. So it took a lot of forgiveness in understanding that my parents had these own pressures for themselves, where they were told that they needed to save face. They needed to bring honor to the family. It was not honorable to show that emotion, and it was also not honorable. You would be seen as a crazy person if you sought therapy. So all of those barriers compounded year after year really did a doozy on me. So I made a vow that after I did seek a therapy, when I decided I wanted to become a mother, I said, I will always, and I remember looking at my child when we were still in the hospital for the first few days, and I said, I promise, whatever you feel, tell me, because I will listen to you. And I tell him this every single day. And even though he's only 2, I ask him all the time. Whether or not he understands it or not is one thing, but I hope that through some kind of osmosis, he'll understand and then feel like when he can comprehend, know that his mother is always listening to him and it is okay for him to cry.
Yeah, I love that. I think I really resonate with the thought that like parents, your job, well, first I always say that like parents really are like a child's first religion. It's like their whole life, like the framing of their life starts with parents. So it's a crazy responsibility, right? It really is. But I really resonate with just like my job is to make sure my kids are safe and they understand unconditional love, you know, and I think that's like just very simple 2 things that I live by. I think when I think about my parents, so I'm 37 now, and I feel thankful, and some of this is through the encouragement of my little brother, actually. But I'm at a point where I have full like understanding. I appreciate them. I know where, you know, I would change things, but I think every parent does the best they can with the tools that they have, you know, and we are a totally different generation. Mental health wasn't a thing then. Unconditional love and talking about that wasn't a thing then. And so I think, you know, I'm so happy that, you know, we're at a different place. When I think about my parents growing up, I mean, even when they spend time with my kids today, they're like, oh my God, your kids cry so much, you know, and I think about growing up, how they would always say of those who speak Chinese, like, 哭没有用. And they, you know, that was like a whole thing, right?
I'm having some heart palpitations.
Yes, it's like anxiety. And honestly, I think my kids do cry too much. Like, there's like the 3 kids, like, it's like, at 95% that one of them is going to be crying at like any given point. So part of me wonders, like, am I overcorrecting in some way? I'm sure I am, because there is a little bit of like, I'll cry whenever I want, wherever I want. So I wish I could, you know, maybe reel back some of that. But I think for me as a parent, like, I feel like in some ways I'm still to be tested because my kids are young. They're 4. My oldest is 4. So they're not like, I mean, actually in San Francisco, there are some parents that are like, well, my kid's in Russian math. And they're like 4 years old, right? Or like, did you do this book? And I'm like, oh my God. And honestly, we're so busy that I'm like, I at least like remove myself from that, you know, aspect of things. But yeah, there are plenty of people who are in piano lessons and Russian math and all that. And I know that like, obviously we're in the early innings of that. So it's more important to me that I just like, I think I'll be tested in the future when there's more of that like active comparison. And I just remembering like your kid's job is not to be a reflection of you. Like, that's not their job. They're not here to like make you look good, right? And to feel good. Like, that's not what they're here to do, right? Yeah. And I think it's just that checkpoint all along the way is super important, but it's very much like, you know, opposite of how I grew up.
Yeah, I think I've noticed as a dad that my tendency, and I think I feel like mostly Asian parents I know do this, is that we're deathly afraid of our kids getting hurt or anything happening to them. So you don't let them climb a tree because you're like, oh, no, don't climb that because you might fall, or don't do that because you might like slip, or don't do that because you might, whatever, break something. But I feel like I try to program myself not to do that because the fear of trying and taking risks and failing is something that we are so bad at doing and letting our kids do. Because I think our parents were terrified. We were their children. They put everything into us, and they do not want us to break or anything to happen to us. But in doing so, it makes us so afraid to try to go on our own, or to speak up, or to do anything like in the workplace, or take risks on ourselves, to bet on ourselves, to go off the beaten path and do something that might sound crazy or whatnot, but it starts really early. If you don't let your kids take the chance on themselves and just climb that tree and maybe fall, break their arm, whatever, they'll heal, they're fine. They always, at least the non-Asian parents always say the kids are resilient, so I really believe that. But not my kids. But I also am like, I feel like so many of us, my parents were never the ones who were like, we want you to be a doctor. I'm surprised they never were, but they didn't say that. They did say I had to be going to like business or something. We both went to Wharton for undergrad, and that was terrible because as a senior in high school, I mean, I guess I chose it because they wouldn't pay for school otherwise, but it was like, as a senior in high school, going into college and knowing you're going to business like right off the bat when I didn't get to explore anything, I mean, it felt unfair, but they're like, you have to go to college and get a job. Like that's the only reason you're going to college and we're paying for it is so you're getting a job, to get paid, and you have security. And so for me, it was like being programmed to do that at such an early age is like, it seems so unfair because I didn't get to explore what I wanted to do. But, my parents, I played tennis and I rode my bike to practice and, whatever, and they paid for my coach and whatnot, but I didn't get to try a lot of things. With my kids, I let them try, all sorts of things. And if they don't want to do it, they don't want to do it. If they don't want to do piano, I literally did air violin and I was second violinist because I hated it. Like, I was sitting in the back with my friend Ajit, and we would, during orchestra, and we'd pretend we're playing because we never practiced. So we were so bad. If we actually touched the violin, everyone would know. But that's the thing is I had to choose between these instruments. When I wanted to play guitar or drums or something, my son plays drums now because I'm like, that's way cooler because no other Asian kids are playing drums. They're all playing violin and piano.
Yeah.
But the being programmed, I hate to say it, I see so many first-gen immigrant kids now being forced to do the same stuff we were forced to do. And it breaks my heart because I'm like, I'm sure these kids do not want to play piano. They want to do something else, but they have to. And I see it all over again, PTSD. But my hope is that we let our kids explore and find themselves. If, my kids want to become a chef, they got to pay their own way and they got to pay their bills, but they have to be the best chef they can be. But I'm not going to say don't do that. And I know I've gotten this before where I've given talks with the older crowd, and they're like, you sound like an American white person. How dare you say this? And I was like, no, this is, I want my kids to be happy because I don't want them to resent me for the rest of their lives. And then I also want them to share with me and talk to me about the things that they're struggling with. I didn't talk to my parents about this stuff. And so, now my conversation with my mom is often the same stuff over and over again. She's like, oh, are you making a lot of money doing that? Or when are you gonna buy a bigger house? Or when are you doing this and that? I was like, oh, geez. So, but I want my kids to talk to me about what's going on in their lives, who they're dating, what they're struggling with, what jobs they want, what projects they're working on, what they're doing for fun. I have 2 boys, so I can barely get them to talk about anything. They're just it's fine, whatever. But at least I want them to feel safe in that. So, I never got hugged. I don't remember a single hug I ever got, but I probably hugged way too much. But that's, to me, I want them to feel safe, being able to come to me for anything.
Yeah, thank you so much. Let's talk about this idea of tending to that child within. So some of you have mentioned being in therapy, and when you think about the most impactful element of healing your child within, what has been that lesson that you feel like really made a difference, like almost gave you freedom or opened you up to a whole new part of yourself once you were able to forgive or heal or move through that childhood part of yourself. And so feel free to, whoever would like to go first.
I can start with this one. I mean, I think for me, writing has been somehow the most healing thing for me because a lot of people read a lot of my essays and they come back to me and it's like, oh, I've thought all these things before, but I've never been able to pinpoint like what it was or why it was that I felt that way, but you've been able to do that. And for me, it's like, I mean, I'm glad that people feel that way, but in a lot of ways, I'm just doing it for myself because I'm trying to figure out this mess like inside me and why do we behave this way? Why do I behave this way? And just process all that because we don't do that enough. And I think through writing and just doing the work, I mean, it takes me like months sometimes to write these essays because I'm looking up reasons why certain behaviors are the way they are and maybe researching some of it, talking to people. But it isn't until after like I've written it and I hear from other folks how much it's helped them that I realize I'm like, oh, this helped me too, but I didn't realize people need to put this out there to discuss because so much of this is so taboo or we're ashamed to talk about weakness or anything like that. And it's not in our culture, again, to discuss these things and saving face, talking about weakness is really not a good thing in the culture. So I think it's trying to encourage people to ask for help, get therapy, get coaching, process this with other people, be in places like this where you can actually talk about it openly. I think it's the tsiku thing and just swallowing all of that.
Yeah.
I mean, that leads to, like, number one, Asians are the most likely to commit suicide in teenage populations. Things like that, I mean, that's not healthy. I mean, these are the reasons why we have to have these spaces to discuss these things because bottling that up inside and enduring that pain, it just leads to a lot of bad places. So.
Yeah, and we were talking about this in the green room too, is that when we finally realized that it was okay to share, our collective stories became so strong. I mean, look, the fact that we're even here today, I mean, look around this room. We are so incredibly strong that this community wants to come out and listen to these stories and also be able to relate. For me, when I was in therapy, I finally realized, well, I should back up and say what got me there, because after years of being told that I would be a crazy person, I had a breakdown on television. And this was like the biggest no-no of them all. You were not supposed to cry, you're not supposed to show emotion. But I remember I had interviewed a woman who had lost her son in a brutal shooting, and she had not told anyone for an entire year. And because of community members, some of you I think may be in this room, put me in touch with her and said someone needs to interview her so her story gets some play and that she eventually gets justice. I will never forget this. I was in my office watching the B-roll back. She had pulled her sweater down and she was weeping behind her mask. And it was a heart monitor because she said her heart was so broken and she wished she had been the one killed, not her son. And I lost it because it was years and years of covering these heavy stories and not talking it through about why this was so harmful, so painful, so much trauma, all built up that it all released itself when I went to go on the air for everyone. So that was when someone stepped in and said, you should probably get help. I still did not for months because that is how ingrained it was in me that I needed to forego all of that and just forge ahead. And in therapy is when I realized that it was okay to be mad. I was harboring all this anger and fury over what was happening to our community during this anti-Asian hate movement that I wasn't able to process it. And it clicked for me that if I didn't take care of myself, I would not be able to take care of this community. So that was my path, but it took a really long time to get there, and I'm really glad that it happened the time that it did.
Yeah, for me, I didn't even have awareness of like all of this, all of the internalization and just anything around my own mental health and what I was feeling until really like my late 20s, in my mid to late 20s. And over the last decade, I think it's just been this exploration, this kind of recognition, this acceptance and healing. And I think what's been really healing for me is just like the awareness of, what kind of makes me, what my history was with my parents and all the traumas that I had as a child, and then also letting it go, and also being able to forge my own family and my company, and just kind of being able to be a proponent for people being themselves and not feeling like you have to change yourself, and not feeling like we're not enough, everywhere that we turn and every image that we see. And so for me, that's been really healing. And I think on social media, social media is a disaster for this, right? Like, it's just, just nonstop, just doom scrolling and seeing images and seeing people live their best lives ever, looking amazing, and just constantly comparing yourself to other people. And I really encourage everybody to just be aware of that, really aware of that, because so much of what we absorb is subconscious. It's like we're not even like really understanding what's happening to our brain, and then all of a sudden you're just like, you close your app and you find yourself feeling like shit, and you're like, what just happened? So today I still deal with that, but I have more consciousness. So I can be like, oh, that doesn't make me feel good, I'm done with that. Or I understand what happened, right? Like, I saw something, I wish I was this XYZ, and that's all fake. It's not my reality, and I don't need to feel that way. And this is my life, I love it, blah, blah, blah. There's a little bit of just this like hyper awareness of, maybe some of the trauma that we experienced that led us here, and how do I reverse that today? And so being somebody who's on social media a lot for my job, I really have to practice that, but it's really important, especially for this next generation.
Yeah, for me, I think a lot about reflection, and reflection being a big part of it. And for me, what that really means is looking back on what makes me me, and really accepting that as part of me, and tying it back to, I'm sometimes a little distractible and kind of get lost in my thoughts sometimes, and that was always, for me, a bad thing, and I would always have to be able to be normal and pay attention and focus. But on the car ride to school every day, I would look out the window and see, because this is the one sunny part of San Francisco, so it's actually, you could actually see the shadows on the asphalt, but the car would be driving down. It would be 96.5 KOIT blasting on the radio, and we would jump from shadow to shadow. The car would travel from shadow to shadow, and then every time there'd be this gap in shadows, I would make some silly excuse to keep the game going, and I made this game lost in my thoughts and lost in just whatever, having fun. And this fun meant so much to me. And on one hand, I was being told this distraction is bad, you should get rid of it, you can't be distracted, you got to pay attention. And on the other hand, I felt alive, I felt like me when I was distracted. And when I reflect, and I feel like this is super important for our generation to reflect, I felt that it's not, this is good, it's not my mental health issues, it's good, it's not that it's bad, it's part of me, and it is me. And no one can take that away from me, but it's something that is deep inside of me, and something that I really got to learn and understand what it means to me, how it affects other people, and how I can move forward being completely myself, and also understanding just understanding myself, being content with myself, and being there for myself. Yeah.
Ethan, the way you just described that was so articulate, and it feels like that's what healing is, right? It is the deep acceptance and even loving the parts of ourselves that other people have told us were bad or not good. Mm-hmm. And I think You all have shown us all these parts of yourselves that you've had to confront in potentially really hard times in order to get to where you are. And I hope you, as you're here gathered together with all these successful people, right? They have the titles, the degrees, the success. But I hope you see that it was a hard-earned path to get here, and that all the hoops were maybe not the gold stars that we thought they would be, but it was finding that inner contentment that is the true measure of success. And so we do these sessions and we create this space because we want you to know what it feels like to be in vulnerability and to know that you don't have to be perfect. You don't need to figure out what your life mission is at 17, that you don't have to live under the constructs that people tell you you have to do. And so now I have a challenge for all of you as we move into the Q&A and you move on into the rest of your day, is that how do you create space in each of your own lives? Because the very thing that we did here is something that you can do. And whether it's to listen to a young person as they are trying to just process what they're feeling inside, or if you're a parent and redefining success for a child and saying that actually whatever you choose is okay with me, or giving space for emotions. And this is where I'm going to give a plug for therapy. You can only tolerate hard emotions as much as you know how to do that for yourself. And so you don't have to do it through therapy. You can do it through journaling. You can do it through that inner work. But you can only carry another as far as you have gone. And so for a lot of us, we never learn that skill. And so we are not comfortable when people come to us with those hard emotions. And I truly believe that if we learn that skill alone, our next generation is set up in a way that would be transformative. And so how many of you all have a youth that you know and you love? Raise your hand. Okay. So as we close out, I'm going to ask you to close your eyes and think of that youth or those youth. And I'm going to ask you to keep their face or their essence in your mind as I read you this poem. And it's by Khalil Gibran from the book of poems, The Prophet. And a woman who held a babe against her bosom said, "Speak to us of children." And he said, "Your children are not your children. They are the sons and daughters of life's longing for itself. They come through you, but not from you. And though they are with you, yet they belong not to you. You may give them your love, but not your thoughts, for they have their own thoughts. You may house their bodies, but not their souls, for their souls dwell in the house of tomorrow, which you cannot visit, not even in your dreams. You may strive to be like them, but seek not to make them like you. For life does not go backward, nor tarries with yesterday. You are the bows from which your children, as living arrows, are sent forth. The archer sees the mark upon the path of the infinite, and he bends you with his might, that his arrows may go swift and far. Let your bending in the archer's hand be for gladness, for even as he loves the arrow that flies, so he also loves the bow that is stable. May we all be the bow from which our next generation of youth can stably fly forward in the direction of their own choosing. Thank you all for joining us today.
This is for Dion.
Oh.
During the pandemic, you were such a beacon of light. And sometimes I had to not watch anymore because the stories you shared, the cases were so traumatic, meaning it hit home. But I was so proud of you. I was so proud of you because I wished in my childhood I had an adult like you who would seek out my stories. My question is this: how did you continue day after day after day without realizing, what you would encounter? Because I'm assuming the type of folks that were at the center of the stories, they reminded you of your parents, our elders, our community. That's one question. How did you continue each day? What was the motivating force? The other question is, as we are tending to the child within, and when you were first introducing yourself, you said something that resonated, was like, I wish they would see me. In a way, was doing what you were doing, seeking these stories, were they also healing you?
I'm so grateful you asked this, and I almost want to tear up because it is people like you, it is people who are in this room who tell me that they paid attention, that they were engaged. And it was like me being 6 years old and in class and nobody wanting to play with me at recess. And suddenly people wanted to learn more, and I could be that conduit to getting these stories told. And one of the very first cases involved an Asian man in San Francisco who was beaten as he was trying to collect cans so he could get some extra cash for his family. And I remember seeing that video on a loop, and whoever that person was who sent that video to me, that 16 or 26 seconds, something clicked here because that man looked eerily like my father. He had a wide nose and he wore this cap and jacket, and I said, oh my God, this could have been him, and here he is wailing like a baby, humiliated. How fair is that? And it was hearing from people like you that came from all walks of life, because suddenly we had a common denominator. It didn't matter if you were a nationally recognized athlete or if you happened to be my neighbor next door. These were issues that were affecting all of us. And I too, at some point, had to throw my phone across the room because I could not bear to watch what was coming in, because these stories were coming in fast and furious, to the point where I remember I spoke to a young woman who had a professor who also said something very racist to her. He ended up getting fired, but it was because she spoke out to me. She DM'd me and then called me at 11:30 at night. I think it was on a Tuesday or a Wednesday. And I said, you know what? The difference between getting him fired and not, and nobody knowing about this, was if I was going to take this call. So it was things like that that drove me every single day, and the hope that with each and every story that we eventually would get to a point where it would be manageable, and then stepping away. And I guess your second question, remind me.
In that way, I find that the things I do as an adult is to revisit my childhood, to kind of be of service to that child. Were you being of service to the community in the most horrific times?
Yeah.
Was it a way also to kind of heal your child?
1,000,000%. Because my mother told me over the course of my reporting, stop doing it, because it makes our community look bad. And at first I was furious. I thought, what are you talking about? This is my profession. This is what I do best. I need to do this. But again, it is so ingrained in her that we are not to be making a fuss, creating noise. I realized this was bigger than her, and that was a way for me to heal, because all of you gave me the validation that what I was doing was right, that I should keep going. But I think if this was maybe 10 years ago, 20 years ago, when I was just getting started and I didn't have that fortitude, if it wasn't a matter of, in some cases, life or death storytelling, I probably would have succumbed and I probably would have shifted gears. Maybe I would go back to entertainment reporting. Maybe I would just pitch the stories of farmers that milk a world record number of cows. I mean, that really was what I did in the Midwest. Yeah, I also went to an all-night Chick-fil-A buffet.
Buffet.
Oh, that sounds amazing.
That exists. Yeah, that totally exists. But yeah, I think, again, seeking that validation from somewhere. I know that we shouldn't have to, but that was the way that I healed. And that also was what encouraged me to step away too, because even though I'm not in tech or in the same industry, I'm not an entrepreneur, my identity was so wrapped up in Dion Lim being that champion for AAPI voices, but I can do so much more. I'm a communicator, I'm a community builder, I have storytelling abilities, and I have all of you. And I said this on the steps at City Hall when I accepted a commendation from the mayor's office earlier this year, and I said, if you have two things on your side, if it is the truth and it is your community around you, no matter what adversity you face, whether it be gaslighting, whether it be being told that you should not be X, Y, or Z, you will prevail when everyone is by your side. Thank you for that question.
Thank you.
Can we just give a round of applause to that incredible panel? This is the reason why we've been so proud to support Creating Space from the very beginning. Twice in LA, once in New York, and now first time in San Francisco, where many of us live. The power to talk about these issues, which are core to who we are. They define our lives, our stresses, our joys, but are so rarely discussed. So I thank the Creating Space team for your inspiration and for your leadership. So round of applause for the Creating Space team. The last time TAAF was in this room was at one of our other greatest events. It was during the NBA All-Star Game, where we're celebrating Asian American presence in NBA and the WNBA. So we had Joe Tsai and Clara Wu Tsai, owners of the Brooklyn Nets. We had Jerry Yang here, the owner of the Warriors. We had Yao Ming sitting in the front row, blocking like 4 rows of people behind him. He is a mountain of a man. We had Natalie Nakase, the new coach of the Valkyries, the hometown Valkyries here, who was voted Coach of the Year. As she said, 5'1" dynamo on the basketball court for UCLA. We had Jeremy Lin here as well. It was incredible. That was about belonging, right? Feeling like we belong in professional sports, we belong in society. 38 The Garden was about us belonging and having sports heroes. So today I think is a lot about belonging as well. It's having the respect of our community, having the respect of our parents, right? Respect is a very important word for our culture, and it's both the goal and I think also part of the problem of what we've been dealing with for so long. So I want to share a little bit about my journey. I'm the head of the Asian American Foundation, but I wouldn't have been in this role if I hadn't gone through a similar journey as many of the panelists as well. I grew up in Maryland. There were not that many Asian Americans in Maryland when I grew up, no big surprise. I had to go to Chinese school like many unfortunate Asian American kids. And I think I went for 12 years because I had very strict parents. But I remember in Chinese school there was once a debate because they're trying to promote, Chinese culture and all these good things. And the debate was, what's better, Chinese culture or Chinese society or American culture, American society? And being kind of the defiant teenager that I was, I debated for the American side. And I had all these great arguments. I said, kids in America don't have to go to Chinese school, number one. Number two is that, we spend our whole lives trying to memorize these characters. You learn 100 this week, you forget 100 next week. I mean, it's just like this endless cycle. You know, somebody in the Romance language world came up with a language that had a dictionary and 26 alphabets. Like, that made so much more sense. I think my parents were very disappointed in me that day because I came home arguing for the other side. But it showed you kind of what I wrestled with also in terms of my identity. And here's a question for the audience. For those of you who applied to colleges, how many wrote about their Asian American identity in their college application? Raise your hands. Because I think it's a big theme for many of us. And so for me, having grown up in Maryland, not being terribly bullied, but always being aware of being a minority was really a life driver for me. And so the change for me was actually, I got to go to this camp called the Chinese Family Camp on the East Coast. And my staff, I've told about this 100 times to my team. In the Poconos every summer, there was a camp for 250 Chinese American families, parents and kids all together. And we would do culture in the morning, sports in the afternoon, and we'd do talent shows and dances and ping pong tournaments at night. And for that one magical week, you felt like you truly belonged. You were part of the mainstream. You were in the cool crowd. And it was such a powerful feeling of this belonging that I've sought it for the rest of my life, frankly. And so after college, after business school, I actually chose to be in a place where I was no longer in the minority. So I went to Asia for 20 years, and I lived and worked in Hong Kong. And so I had a wonderful experience where, you know, the leaders look just like me, right? The leaders in politics, the leaders in business, leaders in showbiz. But the funny thing is, for those of us who are bicultural, is when you go to Asia as an Asian American, people can spot you a mile away. Your Chinese is very mama hoo hoo, and you know, you just look different, you walk different, you talk different. So it makes you really realize at the end of the day who you truly are, and that we are this incredible combination of multiple cultures, multiple identities, and that's what gives us our superpower. And it takes a while. It took me, you know, years to figure this out, and I hear some of you are still on your journey. I think my lesson and my hope is that, number one, you can truly come to that realization that you have 100% the right to be proud of who you are, and that gives you the strength to then be an entrepreneur, to then do things that you never thought you could do before, that you can speak up when you're being treated unfairly, that you can fight back, that you can stand up for what you need to do. I gained that confidence and that belief in my culture being in Asia for 20 years, and that's what I bring to TAAF. And just a little plug about TAAF, because we want to help this community very much so. Our pillars are safety, belonging, and prosperity. Kind of like Maslow's hierarchy of needs. You got to have safety, which includes mental health and physical health. But then you got to have belonging. Do you feel like we're accepted? We have our space in this society. And then you want to prosper and you want to thrive. So that's where we want to work. And for people who are treated unfairly, please come to us. Part of our mission is to try to help and fight back, use our resources to overcome the injustices for our community. It's hard because we get attacked every day, as Dion has reported for a long time. But we're here to try to help you and try to work together and really make sure that we get the respect of our community and the pride for ourselves. I just want to thank again the Creating Space team for all their incredible work today, for being vulnerable, for being open. I always say this is one of the rare times in our community that we actually come together and talk about these important issues, and that thanks to Creating Space. Can I invite the Creating Space team back up to wrap things up? Thank you.
Hi, everyone. I was nominated as tribute to do this, so here I am. I wanted to thank everyone for being here. Thank you so much. Without this, we wouldn't be able to do this type of work. But we wanted to say before you go, please visit our community hub just outside the doors. We put this together just to continue the conversation, to be able to extend what we're doing here and the work that we're doing here. We have some really great organizations out there. We wanted to say we're deeply grateful to the Asian Art Museum, TAAF, our supporters, panelists, and of course, all of the volunteers that came today to help make this possible. This is our team. One last thing. Your entrance today also included an entrance to be able to look around the museum. I'm hearing that there's a really great rave exhibit downstairs, so go check it out, and it might take you back to days before. Um, and with that, I wanted to say thank you. Thank you for coming, and thank you for creating space with us today.